All right, then. So it is around 7 o'clock, 7:02 on Tuesday, January 30th, and this is a meeting of the Norfolk Board of Health. It's now called to order. The first item on the agenda tonight is a public hearing for some proposed floor drain regulations that we are proposing essentially to allow the town to move forward on siting a new well field. What these things are all about is an attempt to try to
Narrator.
to
Exit narrator window. Focused on yes button. Contains yes button. No button.
That'll go
Are
away.
you sure you want to exit narrator?
your computer is talking to you, Betsy. The purpose of the regulations is essentially groundwater protection and therefore drinking water supply protection. And the point is to essentially catch any water in a floor drain that might be contaminated because it was produced in a site that has hazardous material around, and make sure that it goes into a tight tank for proper disposal and doesn't leach into the ground. That's essentially what we're talking about. So, these regulations have been posted for a time now. There's a public hearing that was posted. You, sir, are you here about that?
I'm just here to overhear the tobacco discussion.
Oh, all right.
But I think your work on the floor drains is probably a good thing.
Thank you for your support. Who are you, by the way?
Dennis Lane, Coalition for Responsible Retailers. I travel around the Commonwealth and meet with selectmen boards to help try and reach a balance between cities and towns protecting youth and retailers' ability to.
One sec. You're talking without a microphone, and everybody here has to talk into a microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's one right there.
Thank you. Dennis Lane, Coalition for Responsible Retailing. I travel around the Commonwealth and meet with selectmen, boards of health, city officials, town officials, and try and reach a balance between the rights of cities and towns protecting young people and retailers selling tobacco responsibly. So that's what I do. I just came to overhear your tobacco regulations
All right.
conversation.
Well, be patient. They're coming.
Thank you.
But for right now, we are talking about the proposed floor drain regulation. I don't see anybody else in the room who seems interested in making a comment. Are there any continuing questions or concerns from the members of the board?
No, we've read them over. They look good. Thank you, Betsy, for putting those. You worried?
Well, in the absence of any complaints or concerns,
So I make a motion that we adopt the regulations as we agreed, as they are written. Do we actually have them in front of us? Yes, we do.
Yes,
As
we
they
do.
are written and we looked at and modified
in December.
back in January. But we're going to accept on today, January 30th.
Right.
So I make a motion that we adopt these regulations.
All right. Is there a second?
Second?
And in the absence of further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none. Our new regulations are adopted. All right.
Before we leave tonight, I'll print up hard copy and have you guys sign. Have you sign them.
Okay. Thank you. So that didn't take long. Let's see. We could discuss the tobacco regs. I mean, it's part of new business, and we have somebody here who's interested in them.
Thank you.
So why don't we just move it up to where we are right now?
May I just ask your name one more time, because I didn't catch it the first time around, and which group that you are with?
Dennis Lane, Coalition for Responsible Retailing.
Thank you, Dennis. Okay.
All right. Now, the town of Norfolk does have currently regulations when it comes to the sale of tobacco and tobacco products. What we're talking about tonight is a proposal to modify the current regs. Now, Betsy, the regulations that we have here, the yellow highlighted piece is the new stuff, right?
Yes,
Everything else is already there.
correct.
Okay. So this deals with, well, the underage smokers. Aren't they already in the regs?
Yes, this is the version that Fran sent.
So this is just, yes, stressing the point, statement of purpose. So we just added another paragraph to the statement of purpose. Why are we doing this? The numbers have changed a little bit, the percentages have changed. If you look at the, our current regs, whereas among the 15.7% of students nationwide who currently smoke cigarettes and were less than 18 years old, 14.1% usually obtain them by buying them in a store, convenience store, supermarket, or discount store. So this says whereas 18.1% of current smokers, so this has been updated.
I see, I see.
Okay.
It's an update.
And so the format is changed a little bit. I just want to note that, okay, also on the next page, there's a highlighted area. This is a new paragraph, again, about the purpose of the regs. Whereas the sale of tobacco products is incompatible with the mission of healthcare institutions because these products are determined detrimental to the public health and their presence in healthcare institutions undermine effort to educate patients on the safe and effective use of medication, including cessation medication. So that's new. And then under authority, just note, Betsy, that it says city and town in bold. It doesn't say Norfolk. That's on page 2. Under authority B. So if we were to adopt this, that needs to have Norfolk in it. Everything else talks about Norfolk. Do you see where I mean?
Yep,
Middle of page 2?
yep.
Okay.
And then, this is not highlighted in yellow, but under definition, it should be highlighted, last paragraph, healthcare institution. So there's a definition of a healthcare institution on page 2. So that is new. And that's where it talks about pharmacies being, so that should have been highlighted, because that's new, okay? And let's see. Everybody with me? Continuing to page 3. This is a little bit different. Under tobacco products, if you go down to electronic hookahs, then it says, comma, liquid nicotine, comma, e-liquids. That's also new. Okay?
So liquid nicotine.
Nicotine and e-liquids
Okay, that's
is
new.
also new. Similar products, yeah, the rest of it is the same, okay? And then, I'm on to page 4 now, and this is a little bit different under E. 1, 2, each applicant. There was how do I say, some verbiage changes. Under each applicant, which is number 3, there's our current regs end with the sentence issued, but there's a new sentence that says applicant may be asked to provide evidence that a legitimate business transfer or business purchase has taken place. So that's a new sentence. That's not in our current regs. Under number 3.
So this is an attempt to prove that the applicant is in fact the owner of the establishment?
Exactly, yeah,
Okay.
that's what my understanding is. And, let's see, what else was a little bit different. Under E, our current regs have 9 numbers. E, 1, 2, 3, 4, up till 9. The new regs only have 8 numbers. So these regs combine a little bit of the verbiage. So it's the same information as far as I can see, but it is not exactly the same as our current regs. Okay?
Yeah, that's
But to
fine.
me, it was the same information. And then I think everything on the next 2 pages, everything else was the same. Oh, I'm sorry, except for
forget
that
the
high,
six.
except for, until you get,
Except for the meat of the matter, which
yes,
is on
which
page
is,
6.
right, K,
Yeah.
okay? And, okay, so that's different. That's new. Is, where is K right now? K says incorporation, so this prohibition of the sale of tobacco products by healthcare institutions is, became K, and in our old regs, that's incorporation of the Attorney General.
Right.
So
So-
she introduced that,
Shoved
the
everything
new
else
regs
down.
introduced that, and then, under incorporation of the Attorney General regulation, that is exactly the same, so I don't know why it's highlighted, other than now it's L. It used to be K. And, okay, still with me. Under violations, number 4, the wording for this section is a little bit different than our current reg, but, well, to me, it's the same. It's going to serve the same purpose. So this is violation, and it's a little bit different. So violation here is M. Non-criminal disposition is N. So,
Yeah, as opposed to.
so this
L
is,
and
so, yeah, so this is a little bit different.
M. Yeah, oh, I understand.
And,
Well, let's kind of focus on the reason why I think our visitor is here, which is K,
Right.
which is,
Yes.
which is
Yes.
defining basically a pharmacy as a healthcare institution, and then saying, by the way, healthcare institutions can't sell tobacco.
right.
None of the intent has changed, and the addition that we wanted is in there, so.
Right.
Yeah.
And can I just point out, I put in the packet as well, this fact sheet. First of all, I want to commend the previous board that put the current regulations in place. And I commend you for raising the age to 21. And so now we have an opportunity to further protect the health of young people, which is what we would be doing if we were to prevent the sale of cigarettes in pharmacies. And just so that you have a little bit of background, we're not setting a precedent here. 160 cities and towns have prohibited the sale of tobacco in pharmacies and other health care institutions. And those 160 cities and towns include 68.6% of the population of the state. And,
So these are all in Massachusetts?
yes, this is Massachusetts information. 105 towns have not enacted this revision, but they have no pharmacies. 6 towns have not enacted this policy. They have only Target or CVS, and Target, CVS, Wegmans, and Kmart do not sell tobacco products because of their company policy in their pharmacies. So there are 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. This means that Norfolk is one of 80 towns that has a pharmacy in town and is not restricted to the sale of tobacco products in healthcare facilities. So, and the next piece of paper actually shows you all the municipalities and how many pharmacies are in those municipalities, cities and towns, and they've restricted the sale of tobacco in those towns. So many local communities, Medfield and Medway and, go on, Millis and et cetera. So, I'm hoping that we will adopt.
Okay. I tell you what, why don't you all go ahead right now and say what you'd like to say? And then what we might do is, after we take your comments, actually suspend this conversation because we have something else happening on our schedule at this time, and we'll come back to it later on. But for right now, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Well, thank you, and my focus really isn't on pharmacy. That's not my expertise. I'm a convenience store retailer and have been for 44 years, and I'm very involved. I've been up at the State House. There's been an awful lot of activity, as you know, moving, the Commonwealth is thinking of moving the entire state to 21. There's a lot of conversation about regulating flavors and all sorts of, there's an awful lot of activity going on with tobacco and retail. So my focus is on primarily keeping tobacco products out of the hands of minors. And with 44 years in the business, 30, 40,000 people a month come through my front doors, and we don't have violations. We ID. And we consider ourselves to be the firewall between young folks getting tobacco. If we ID, it makes it pretty impossible for kids to legitimately buy. They can go online or buy it from a social source, an older person, a brother. It's amazing what you can buy online now. But now that it's 21 here in Norfolk and an awful lot of the communities, we're comparing the sale of tobacco products to the sale of alcohol. Alcohol is an age-restricted product. Somebody under 21 can't purchase it, but they also cannot possess it or use it, and city officials and the police and school officials have authority to control young people who possess alcohol. In most of the communities in Massachusetts, it's not illegal for a young person to possess tobacco. There are no possession, use, and purchase laws. In my community, in this community, a young person who was under 21 and who had an alcoholic product could be held accountable. And we're not suggesting that cities and towns criminalize tobacco. We certainly don't want to do that to young people. But it's a catch-22 for us because it's illegal for the retail community to sell to a minor, but it's not illegal for a minor to possess tobacco products. So a minor can be in possession of a pack of cigarettes, walking down the street in this town, and have a cigarette, and nobody can do anything about it because there are no purchase, possession, and use laws. So what we're suggesting to cities and towns is treat alcohol and tobacco exactly the same way. Use the same strong restrictions you have on alcohol to control young people being in possession of tobacco. And that's pretty much why I came here.
Oh, all right. Thank you for that. As you know, we already do have a restriction on age in Norfolk. It is 21. The issue of possession is something we hadn't addressed. It's a somewhat separate topic from the one we're talking about. I see your point, that how can you not legally buy it, but legally possess it? That does seem like a bit of a disconnect. That's understood. But right now, we're actually not even focusing on that. What we're really focusing on now is the fact that we have a pharmacy selling cigarettes. And the question is, does that make sense? And, well, we're, as I say, not going to have this conversation completed right now because we got somebody else who's already on the agenda for this time of our meeting.
Yeah, I mean,
We'll come back to it.
the big thing is that obviously the retailers have already been restricted to 21 and under. And this is just the addition, just to take care of one more establishment being the pharmacy, so.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I just wanted to point out that it would be a big help to the retail community. Not just, the fact that we ID is a wonderful thing.
Right.
And I'm very proud of the fact that in 44 years I've never had a violation. And a lot of responsible retailers, and we don't support retailers who have violations. If you're going to sell to a young person, ultimately you should lose your license. We really believe that. But at the same thing, it is kind of silly. It's actually a true catch-22 that we can't sell it to you, but you can go online or have an older friend or buddy buy it, somehow get a hold of it through a social source, and you can possess it and use it. So
I mean, it just restricts one avenue of getting it. Granted, it doesn't cover up every loophole, it doesn't cover everything, but it puts a layer of protection on that wasn't there before. It makes it a little bit more difficult, that's
I
all.
agree 100%, and I think if tobacco is treated the same way as alcohol, it makes, and there are consequences such as, a young person having to go see the principal, or having a note sent home to the parents. It's one more layer of protection.
Right, so you're advocating for that, then?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We're advocating for purchase, possession, and use laws. If we do our part and age verify, and cities and towns extend the protections by having purchase, possession, and use laws
Right.
similar to alcohol, that makes it, young people will think twice.
All right, so your issue is with our town meeting and then our chief of police, because basically they're the folks that are out there enforcing the possession and use laws.
Yeah. I mean, interesting
had one.
concept. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit beyond the scope, I think, of this discussion, but it's an interesting
Yeah.
concept and would definitely
And
be
I
an
appreciate you
interesting
giving me the
discussion.
opportunity to share that with you.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
by.
Thank you, Mr. Lane.
All right, at this stage, you would like to move to a appointment that we have for
Well, do
7:15?
you want to just vote on these?
No, not yet. Because I have some more discussion
From who?
among the three of us.
You guys need to have a public hearing, too.
Huh?
Yes.
You need to have a public hearing.
This is a public hearing, isn't it?
Not for
Not
this
on the
one.
tobacco.
Because we
Huh?
have to,
Not on the
That
tobacco.
was for the floor
we
drain.
have to publish the
Oh, okay, I'm
regs
sorry.
first.
Thought we had a public hearing for this.
No,
Oh, my bad. Okay.
it's okay, man.
Hey, how are you?
All right, gentlemen, you here to talk about Lakeland Farms 84 Cleveland? Yeah. Good, that's why we are here, too. So, first of all, identify yourselves, please.
My name is Paul Hutnack, I'm with Navy Surveying Engineering.
Paul?
And I'm Owen Kelly with Lakeland Farms LLC.
Okay. So you have a,
But before we start, can I say one thing? We met a while back on this. What's changed since then? Why are we here again?
Sure.
Because I see the same letter was distributed. And at the time, even at the time we had the first one, it's a little uncomfortable having to hear, and we're having some off-the-record discussion, but we have no abutters here or anything else. We're talking about variances. You're almost looking for a direction from us, so you could go ahead and put a variance in and then kind of say, well, this is what you told us. That's kind of the way I see it. But we've already had the discussion. Has something changed significantly since the last time?
So, Owen Kelly, Lakeland Farms. So the biggest change, so we are currently in the process of putting the road in. We have the company SLT doing the road construction. They also did the road construction for us over at Boyd's Crossing. We've used them for a lot of different products. They have a sister company, MBO Precast, who either precasting or casting in place would be handling the tank that we're in discussion of. In talking with them and in talking with the engineers again, since we're getting close to the time of putting it in, they told us, hey, look, we're going to be doing it either way. See if you can revisit with the town, because as far as installation and things went, their thought was that this would be a better product or a better system.
Okay, so nothing's changed design-wise?
No,
It's
no,
just
nothing's
the
changed
same
design-wise.
discussion before?
Exactly. We just have
Same.
another consultant who's kind of told us, hey, if you
Okay.
can revisit the issue.
And I understand as the engineers on the project and everything else, you've got clients that are telling you to move forward and everything else. I get that. I mean, the drawings and everything, I commend you. I think they look great. And honestly, you're going to have your discussion time here, but again, honestly, I think we've already had this discussion. I'm not sure why we're doing it again, but I understand you guys are here because your clients are telling you to be here.
Oh, sorry, I'm the client.
You are the client. So you're here for, I'm not sure why then, because like I said, this is the exact discussion we had before. We went through it, we said, to meet the variance, you've got this criteria to meet, mostly with new construction. You don't meet it. We've had our consultant even go over and give a letter. I'm not even sure if who paid you to do that. But, why are we regurgitating, I guess is my question.
And I'm sorry if it feels like we're wasting the board's time. That's not at all our intent. The big question comes down to the difference between the two structures. So we have the approved cast-in-place design. There's no problem as far as moving forward, putting this in and rolling with the project.
When you say the cast-in-paste design for
For the tank,
the one tank with the minimum clearance at 36 inches?
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I know even the letter states that without that variance, you're going to put in a bunch of smaller septic tanks. Is that different then?
That's revisiting, that's revisiting the same conversation we had previously. If we were to use cast-in-place structures, we would not be able to get 3 feet or less of cover. So then to avoid that, we would need to put tanks in
Right, so
several
it's the
locations.
same discussion, correct?
Sorry. Essentially, the discussion comes down to, on our end, is the cast-in-place tank. It is it 4 feet taller? 3 feet taller? It's 3 feet taller. But as far as
Taller than what?
than a precast tank set in the ground. Same exact footprint, same exact. The only difference is with the cast in place, it's 4 feet taller, and that's to meet the code of having the depth from the surface.
Right. So the letter that we got that was kind of a regurgitation of last time doesn't really come into play then? You're saying that's-
No, exactly.
Okay.
The question here is, we are trying to understand the disadvantages to using a precast tank with risers, concrete risers to the surface. Because the usable area of the tank, like the functioning system, is the same. And the question then becomes, that space that we're increasing is just basically taking the place of a riser. So our question is, could a precast tank be used?
Understand the question, Wayne?
Yeah,
I think
we
I
talked
do.
about this last time.
I believe that they're putting the situation they're in on their own accord. They're making the tank a lot higher, having a higher head in it, because they're not meeting the state code for minimum depth. So they're kind of coming back with a question why, and the question is, because the code said so. We're not here to redesign or refigure things
The question
out.
he's asking now.
No, it is.
Oh, but it is.
It is the question.
It is the question.
It's a
He's
limit
asking
up.
about the same thing, whether it was a riser or whether it was a.
He can meet the
cast-in-place.
36-inch depth if they precast a tank higher up,
Yeah, if we
to
cast it
within
in place.
3 feet of the ground. He's saying, well, why can't we just use a regular tank with a higher riser, in which case that depth
Okay,
is greater than 3
Explain to
feet.
me as a non-plumbing person, what is a riser versus a taller tank?
So you know,
So,
What do you guys?
I'll do it. So actually, either tank would probably have a riser, but the way that we discussed it and the way that the plans are now, there's a cast-in-place tank that is taller, so that there's only 3 feet of cover.
This is the 12-foot tank.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So the liquid depth is basically the same, but it's meets the code, which is what we talked about last time. So now, the question that we've been asked and the road contractors brought up basically is, well, can we go back to that cast in place and have whatever risers maybe we feel the board feels are adequate to serve that same purpose?
the question is, what is the functional difference between having taller risers versus shorter risers?
Well, the question
That's
is,
the riser you're talking about.
right, the question really isn't that. The question is, you're telling us as a variance that you have to prove that there is something manifestly unjust about meeting the regs. It's not us proving to you why you can't use a 3-foot riser.
Also, too, it sounds like they're creating their own problem by making this really big tank and setting their inlet and outlet tees lower and making their head. You're creating your own situation, and you're coming back saying, well, why are we doing this? Because you're trying to avoid a variance. That's what you're trying to do. So it's the top of the tank that has a 36 inches above the ground. So you can try to figure out in your head or try to play with words, saying, well, we got 2 columns here, why can't that be part of the tank? Because it's not. So, and you made a long tank to make it 36 inches, but you deliberately put your T's in lower to make your tank non-functional in a way, like an odd waving function, because you're not using your retention time. You're placing that on yourself. For a variance, it's a manifest injustice.
Right, I
You
mean,
know,
that's the whole thing.
That's what you're looking for. You're not
Tells us
looking for
under new
redesigning
construction
something.
that you have to meet, you have to be deprived, this would deprive the applicant of substantially all beneficial use of the subject property in order to be manifestly unjust. That's the only criteria you're trying to meet. It has nothing to do with us feeling if there's one thing with the tank that's not or acceptable, or why can't we just do that? That's the criteria that you're trying to meet. That's it.
No, I agree. The question is this is all.
It's not the question. You're asking us a question. You're asking us to prove it to you. We don't have to. You have to do it to us.
No, this is, the discussion here, we have a system that works. No, we have a system that works. I'm not.
The tank itself is retention time.
Right.
All right, so you're not you're creating more space in your tank just to satisfy a regulation. You're making
Right,
an
right.
odd-shaped tank because you're putting your T's lower. So you're creating your own problem by not making the tank being useful in its true purpose.
Well, the tank was set in its location based on numerous factors throughout the site. So the bottom of the
Tank
tank.
was placed at that location because a certain design required
Right.
one option. You have many options on this property,
Agreed.
on this project.
Right,
You
right.
placed that on your own, sitting there. No one forced you. You weren't forced to do it. It wasn't your only option. It's one
Had all the
option.
design parameters.
Absolutely. We decided that where that tank, the bottom of that tank is and where the T's come in is the best location. That is the decision that we made. The question that we have is simply, what is the functional difference between a cast-in-place tank and a precast tank?
One of them meets Title V, one of them doesn't.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, it's an unfair question because their tank isn't set properly as a typical tank. They're not using the total retention
it-
time in a tank. You're making a top-heavy tank
It's-
because of your situation. The other option, say,
retention time is
why
not
can't you take the grade off and lower the grade down? If you like that design so well, another option is lower the grade.
Right, but there, no, as you know, there are,
And
there
then
are
your tank,
lots of.
then your tank would be, you can use your regular sized tank. I mean, there's different ways of working this out,
Right.
other than trying to
Get
make
relief.
it into some
Oh,
kind
can I
of science
interject here?
project.
I mean, wait, I think what I'm hearing is, yeah, there are all kinds of different ways to skin the cat, but what's the difference hydrologically between the two sketches that were just made on this piece of paper here, one of which shows the monster tank with the
There you
little
go.
riser,
That's it.
and one which shows the regular tank with a big riser?
Right.
Operationally, in terms of wastewater treatment,
Right.
is there any difference?
One's in compliance and one's in
No,
non.
No,
Not the
but, no, I
question.
know what you're saying. No,
What,
contact
in
time,
terms of
residence time.
protecting the
no.
environment, is
That's-
different between these two
As
drawings?
a regulator, you're trying to make.
I'll add to
make-
the drawing.
It's a question, there were no answer to it, because the tank has its functional means, but it's buried too deep. So you can say the same thing with a
But
pipe and
mechanically,
stone.
though, what,
But-
which
but-
causes
but- but-
difficulty in terms of
but Tom,
maintaining the tank, or
You could say
what?
the same thing with a trench.
No,
A
the tank,
trench and
the
pipe.
tank is the same size, it's the same residence time, the same contact time and everything
Yeah,
else, the
yeah,
same
right.
distance between inlet to outlet. So nothing changes, it's just this top sections. To get in compliance, this is built higher
Yeah, you
up.
got this mezzanine built up there
Yeah,
on top,
that's
that's
it.
what you got.
That's it.
Which doesn't affect anything, except it gets your top closer to the surface
Mm-hmm. Right, now
of
does
the
it affect
ground.
anything? Well, if you want to get into nitty gritty, I mean, accessing this, you want to go down an 8-foot tube, you want to go down a 3-foot
Well,
tube.
see, this is the only question I've got for
Right,
y'all,
right.
is that when you're talking about somebody's got to get in here from time to time.
Yep.
All right? How do you basically use the standard equipment that these guys have,
Yep.
service the tank that's buried 8 feet deep?
So
And is there an outlet
in both
filter on this?
situations,
Is there
the
an outlet
service is exactly the same. Because both cases, the bottom of the tank is at the same height. So you're going to need the same, you're going to be traveling down the same distance. And that opening is sized in such a way that you can get, whether it's a ladder or whatever machinery you get. So when you're going to like empty the tank, the hose needs, the clean out needs to get all the way to the bottom, and that bottom is staying the same depth.
I'm talking about the.
And then the
fellow
servicing.
that works for Wind River, or whoever it is who's
Yeah.
out there, he can stand on the ground and clean the tank that's, 3 feet below the ground.
Well, he needs to,
He's going to climb into that tank.
well, he would either way. To get to
really?
the bottom, because the bottom of the tank is at the exact same
You're not
height.
going to climb into the tank. to
No, you
clean
just
it.
got a long, whatever you got to dislodge the sludge and pump the stuff up.
Right.
You don't physically yourself have to climb down inside that tank.
For both.
Unless you got an 8-foot riser, you got to basically snake down through to
But
do
you're
your
not,
work.
it's not a small pipe.
How big's the
We're
riser?
talking about, here, what's the size of it? Sorry, I keep passing the mic because I know
Yeah.
there are people at home.
For the riser, are we
Yeah.
talking about? A lot of them are like 3x5. I mean, they're good size, or they can even be as big as 4x6.
All right, but I'm back to this drawing, which may or may not be
Right.
realistic.
just scale.
But-
That's the
It's
scale,
good.
yeah.
All right, so the idea is, if you're up here and you've got one of those long-handled things that they use to make sure that all the muck off the bottom got dislodged, you can't even hit the corners because of the high riser that you've got here. You got to snake yourself down in here somehow and then work the corners.
I mean, there's
That's a
multiple
problem I
accesses.
can see.
So those doors
Yeah.
are like either 3x5 or 5x7. Like they're.
The risers?
There's 3 of them too, so
Yes.
there's multiple points of
Right.
access.
So these aren't small like your in your yard septic system like the
Well, that's my
small-
reference point, so
Yeah, no,
I'm sorry.
absolutely. No. Please, that's why I was.
I wanted to say one
big
thing.
Doors, with the idea of if you need to access them to get down into them, that you can.
Well, I don't want to send anybody down
Oh,
into
no,
there,
no,
frankly.
no, this would be like, big problem situation, but,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, for routine maintenance, I'm just talking about the non-need to have anybody basically put on a scuba tank to get down here and do the work.
and the system would be the same, because with like, if the board decided 5x7 was the appropriate size top with that. With a 5x7 and 3 doors all the way across, you can get to every single corner of the bay.
From the surface.
From the surface, yeah.
The last discussion we had about this topic,
Yeah.
we brought this up at the time. And we said you have to meet the 36, and we pretty much went through the Title V saying, this is new construction. You guys knew everything that was laid out in front of you to do this design, and you had to meet the new construction part of that variance. And we went through, and I just read it again, so I won't do it again, but you know what Title V is, and what it says, that you have to prove that there's something that's gonna lose all the beneficial use of the property and everything else. We went through that with you last time. I know you weren't here, I don't think, right? But we went through it, and at the time, I believe you said, well, I can just extend the top of the structure up and make it 3 feet closer to the ground. And at the time, that was a little bit strange, but you said, well, it's gonna meet Title V, you can do that. And that was our last unofficial, so to speak, discussion, and that's kind of left with marching orders. So now, you've come back and done that, but you're still asking for the variance.
So.
And you still haven't met, it just all goes back to that one thing with the variance. You haven't met that criteria. That's what it boils down to. And it might be, well, we could argue a lot of things about Title V that realistically, maybe you could get away with doing. It might not meet the reg, but we could do it because, you know what, in this situation, it's gonna work. We could do that with a lot of the regulations. But it boils down to, you haven't met that part. And this was the fix that you had talked about months ago. So now you're arguing against your own fix.
So no, I'm not arguing against the fix. We have it, it's ready to go, we can go ahead and do it
Right.
as soon as.
I would just like to make a point versus the low tank and the one with the tubes going down, it's visibility. If you're looking down a tube 3 or 4 feet down, you can only see so much down below. And if the tank is up high, you can actually look at different angles, you can see different Ts, if they're actually operating, see what's inside the tank and stuff. So if you put a tunnel effect, you're forcing a human to go in there into a closed confinement to take a look at it, see if the Ts are clogged, the Ts fell off. So it's also part of maintenance. You don't have the visibility with it being so low. It's a tunnel effect, it's a tube effect. You'd actually-
That was my question, Wade.
Yeah.
Then the answer was, well, wait a minute, these aren't tubes, these are 5x7 entry points.
But it's still an enclosed area. The tanks are huge. The tank is huge, so you still got to.
42 feet, I think, or something like that.
You can have as big as you want, but the tops of the tanks are only, they're certain sizes.
Yeah.
You know, it's a manhole cover. So you're looking down in it, so you don't actually have access of the whole tank. You're looking at only
Well, not
part
through
of
one of
it.
them, but you're talking about three of them, right?
But even if three, it's still
But none
difficult
of
to
this,
see
none of this
inside the
helps
tank.
meet the.
I know,
variance
that's another
request.
story
So, I mean,
altogether.
you know where I stand
But
on it.
I
feel like we're
appreciate
going in
Wade
circles
coming at
again.
least with the operational side, and I
absolutely.
appreciate the answer to that. Because that was my question. Operationally, what's the
Right.
difference?
And that was kind of our point that we're bringing
All right,
forward
well,
here.
I think
is-
we've all
Yeah, yeah.
We've all heard the points
Yeah, yeah.
at this stage. I think we're still left with, hey, go look, guy, you can do this, you got the approval to do it. I suspect if we had another vote of the board, which I'm not going to even ask for, we're going to get the same result.
Okay.
Because obviously the engineer hasn't changed his mind. This guy hasn't changed his mind. And so, and I don't think Fran has either. And even though I asked some questions about it, look, we basically are disinclined
Sure.
to acquiesce to your request, as they say on the Caribbean. Yeah.
That's fair. I will say, like I
So-
said, I think those drawings look great that you guys did, you put together.
Appreciate that.
And again, we didn't mean to waste the board's time at all.
You gotta ask.
And I understand that the Title V regulation is about, can we use the property, can we not use the property? The question that was on our end was, we're trying to be efficient, and when we have the engineers and the people who are doing it saying, hey, these two are the same thing, that's why we brought it to you, that's all.
Well, there are some subtle differences, we were talking about them, but anyway, bottom line is, you got a plan, it's been
Yeah.
approved, let's build it.
Absolutely. Now, one last question, just based on your point. If for some reason we had, we were talking about sight lines and things like that. If we came up with more like detailed drawings showing that operationally they were the same, visibility wise, you can draw all the sight lines. I'm not going to say right now, yes, they're all I've been told is that they are. But if we brought forward, our goal here is not to build an inferior product at all. We're in the town, we're building Boyd's Crossing, we have this project here in Lakeland, we have the villages coming up in a little bit. Our goal is to be here and be building a good product in town. I do not want to burn bridges for $300,000 at Lakeland. That's just never going to go. We're here for the long haul. So
So
my
you
goal
should
here,
probably realize that you're not gonna get relief for new construction, most likely, from this board. And then going forward with your designs, you might wanna, incorporate that when, hey, we're not gonna get a variance, let's design this because we're not gonna get a
and we
variance.
did. I mean, we put the we have a product that works. It works with the project. The goal is not.
Yep.
If we didn't think we could still build the project with this, we wouldn't have started
No,
building
right,
the
but
road.
we're
in.
just saying, it
Right.
looks like you're getting that, if you're not meeting the
Our-
sections of 15-410, let's not even ask, let's
No,
just design it correctly.
the reason to have the question and the reason I brought the question forward is because our goal here is, again, if they were the same, is it worth $300,000 if they're operationally the same? That's the question. Or is there a better use for, all of that is, I think we can be proud of how Boyd's Crossing has come out as far as the look and the contribution to the town as far as that Main Street site goes. Maybe, I don't know if everybody feels that way. All that, the money from the tank can go into other pieces of the project. And that's the thought is, why use it on a tank that is exactly the same from an engineering standpoint? And that's why we're bringing it forward. If the board, it's in every right of the town and the board to hold to that, and that you will not hear me, making a fuss.
Can I just ask, so have you presented two designs, or one design that's been approved?
No design's been approved.
Well, then, I guess I'm totally confused.
We have a design that's been approved. That's the one, or that's not that's been approved,
Nothing's
but
been
that
approved
meets
for the
Title V.
project.
That meets Title
According-
V. According to our engineers, right, which that's what
Okay.
we hired them to do.
One design.
Which is the
Right.
12 by
Which is
42.
the-
Right, which is the
The
taller
tall one.
tank.
That's the-
But
And
that's
you're
the
saying-
story job.
But still, that hasn't been approved.
Okay,
Because we haven't
but
seen it.
and you're saying that you think you might be able to save $300,000 if you go to the smaller tank?
Correct.
Which you haven't presented. Does that meet Title V?
No, it does, that's why, no, that's why it's here, but the reason it doesn't meet Title V is not an operational or service reason. The question is, why wouldn't it meet Title V?
Why doesn't it meet Title V?
Depth, it's too deep.
Oh,
It's, the bottom of it's
so
not
then
too
it doesn't
deep.
meet Title V.
Correct.
So then it's not an appropriate design,
Right, and,
unless you get a variance, and we won't give variances on new construction. So we going around in a circle
Yeah, we are
here?
going.
oh, yeah, that's, no, everybody,
It's called a wear down.
perfect.
Well, no,
Oh,
I'm
I'm sorry,
not
I'm really
feeling-
not trying to, like, bother anybody from this.
and frankly, you
I
haven't
hope
worn
that
me
I'm
down
not.
at least 1 millimeter. But
No, and I-
But I'm just trying to.
I was just curious from the get-go.
Yes,
To Fran's question, okay, it doesn't meet Title V.
right.
It doesn't meet Title V because it's got too much dirt between the surface of the ground and the top of the tank. It's got,
Yeah.
whatever it is, 8 feet?
Right.
Compared to should be less than 3 or 3 or less.
Right.
So now the question is, well, what if they put a riser up to the top, but left the tank where it was? Now, the top can be 3 feet from the ground, but does that meet the intent of Title V? And actually, that's a good question. I don't know.
Right.
Wade, that's actually a good point. If the tank includes a feature, which is in fact 3 feet from the ground, does that mean the tank is 3 feet from the ground?
I would say no, and I gave you the point of accessibility, visibility.
Right, and if he's just asking the question, if he can prove
Right.
there's no problem with accessibility, does he meet the requirement of Title V?
Not for a variance.
I mean,
Well, no.
but beyond, to prove anything to the board, I think it'd be more beneficial for the board if they could prove compliance, like maybe bring the tank somewhere else, or, because they're talking about a certain price, which they placed on themselves. And they're talking about $300,000, and it's almost like, oh, I have this burden that the Board of Health is putting on me by $300,000. But still, if you look at that design, if you can flip on the design, there's a lot of options of putting more tanks will actually be gravity fed into the field, and they can reduce the size of the pump. Because they have a huge pump pumping it out. There's a lot of different options on this design for them to save money. But they just seem to be very stubborn, and they want to go with this one design with the tank being in non-compliance, and that's what they want. And then they're just going to try to interpret it or describe it or just play with the words enough to basically wear you down and say yes or no. I just don't know. It's pretty straightforward to me.
I keep forgetting that.
And there's-
I,
look at it-
please,
look at that
don't
land,
let
it's
me
like 6
wear
acres
you
of
down with
land.
words. That's not at all what I'm trying to do. And that's why I was saying, I was trying to understand what is the specific concern and from an engineering standpoint. Like I've been over this with them. Is it because, hey, more dirt weighs more, and is that more load on the tank? No, that has nothing to,
But let's go back to the code, which we're actually,
But that's the thing, right now, you're asking, we're doing this again, we did this last time, we're going in circles, and now it is getting annoying, but you're
sorry.
asking us to tell you why this doesn't work, and that's not the case. You have to prove, per Title V, that this is gonna substantially take away from your property. I don't wanna say it again, but we are going around in circles now, we all understand this,
Yeah,
right?
well, there's 2 different sides to this coin, which is where the circle is coming from, and that is, the applicant is talking about what is the real impact, and we're talking about bureaucracy. So I'm trying to take the non-bureaucratic approach here, which is, all right, what exactly are we doing to protect the environment by disallowing you from burying a tank 8 feet in the ground? But then
You can't
building-
separate them, Tom, though, because the bureaucracy part is part of this.
Well, I
It's
know
the
we're-
whole
I
new
know we're
construction.
bureaucrats, but I've
We
always
check the
hated to
boxes.
act like one.
All right, well, but if you don't, unless you want to change Title V.
No.
please.
Hey, look, no, what I'm asking the question, though, I asked it of Wade, actually, is if you build a riser so that now the riser is 3 feet from the ground, have you in fact met the requirement under Title V?
We
And
did
your-
bring this
and
up at
Wade,
the
your
last
answer
time, too.
was,
No. Now, let's go back to the variance itself and the argument that the applicant gave this board for the variance. And the reason why they want to do this is for safety, hazard, and maintenance access. This is the right reason why they want one tank and they want to bury it, because they get safety hazards and maintenance access if you have multiple tanks.
Oh.
That is the reason, that is the key core. It's not because of design aspects but if you look at a tube going down to a very large tank, I would say that's a very hazardous position for a worker to go into to see if there's something lodged in the tank or pumping it out or
Well,
looking for
right, which is
sludge.
why I said, wait a minute. The guy sent the guy down there with a scuba tank, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, right. So
And their
the
answer was, that's not what we're talking about now. That's not the design.
Okay, but I'm saying the reason why we're even here for a variance is because the design engineer said if he has multiple tanks, it's going to create a safety hazard and maintenance access. And this is supposed to relieve it. And I'm just, again, that's,
Well, now it's changed to $300,000.
well, yeah, now they're putting into our finances, which they placed on themselves. So as my advice to the board, that shouldn't really be a very convincing argument, because now they switched it into a cost factor, where before it used to be a public
Well,
safety
these
factor,
things, frankly,
maintenance.
wait, this has got nothing to do with the question that I asked, which is what is the difference in terms of why we are a Board of Health? Let's just for a second ask that question. And I'm trying to still get a straight answer. If they operate the same way, then the only question we've got is, does the top of a riser, if you can get access to every single square inch of the bottom of that tank with multiple large risers, what then is the issue here? And in terms of three-dimensional reality, not what's written on, letterhead from the Beacon Hill, in terms of what's actually in the ground, what difference operationally does it make? That's the question I was asking.
Why was they both go down the same depth in the
Yep.
ground?
Yep. The bottoms are the same depth. The issue is how much dirt is piled on top of the smaller tank. That's the only issue. And then does the risers count as part of the tank?
You're creating a confined area. I mean, it's a tank that large, and if it's in use, we're gonna have methane gas coming up, sewer gas coming up, and for people to crawl down in those areas, it's very dangerous.
Whoa. Nobody's crawling anywhere.
Tanks are maintained and they're maintenance. This isn't just a one day. This project they're building should probably last longer than we will be on this earth. I mean, this is the neighborhood you're talking about,
Yeah.
and they're dependent on the tank. And that tank will be serviced many times.
Right. But you're saying somebody's going to crawl into the tank to service it?
Well, with the tubes.
No. Wait, you're not listening.
Well-
There's no tubes.
Well,
They
well,
got
no,
5x7 chambers on
because-
top of the tank.
because your question
to give
isn't
them
one
access
answer.
without climbing in. Asked that question in half an hour ago. I asked this question. Do people have to actually get into the tank to service it? Because that's a huge operational difference. And the answer I got, were you listening? No.
Well, it's a wrong answer. It's a wrong answer. Depends what kind of service. You're talking about a pump out. I'm talking about something probably that's inside of it. A T fell out, part of the pipes inside might have fallen out, so it's go in and retrieve it,
Yeah.
put another one in. The T, maybe there's some kind of clog in there, someone needs to look at it.
So you have to physically get into the
At
tank.
times, tanks are, you do
Okay,
have to get
all
inside.
right, all right.
And you might have a leak in a tank, someone might want to patch it. I mean, it's an ongoing,
So you're seeing an inherent
and that's,
danger in having to go into a tank that's, say, 12 feet deep versus one that's HA deep.
just to peek in and see where the T's are, yes. I mean, just even to put your head in the tank itself, you're going down in a 4-foot enclosed area, which will be oxygen, lacking of oxygen. I mean, it's a dangerous situation,
But-
and you're creating it. I mean,
All right, you know what,
and I'm
guys?
just-
Yeah.
We've been at this for about 40 minutes.
That's fine, I don't want to.
So we're not going to resolve this in your favor this evening.
Yeah, okay.
And it's kind of looking like you're going to have to build a big tank.
That's fine. You brought up some very interesting points. Let's call it for tonight. Everybody's tired, and we'll, and if there's more data to send to the Board of Health when we do our submittal, we'll do that. Like to wait for
Right. Well,
reviews.
you've heard the argument about
I'm-
dangerous service issues surrounding this idea of a really deep tank.
Do you mean
And
you'll be submitting
there are
in?
more, there are more pieces, so like both tanks that we're talking about here have the same depth. So the height of service is going to be the same regardless. Both, one meets Title V and one doesn't, but both have the same service depth. So if somebody was going down, it's still going to be a 12-foot. You're going to use the same ladder to get down to either way. So in that one and whatever 50-year or 30-year situation.
It could be 3 months.
Sure. But in that same situation happens to both tanks. In both of them, you're going down 12 feet.
Not particularly, because you can't observe, I'm talking about visually looking inside the tank. One of them, you actually have to climb into the tank 4 feet into the ground, which is an area with no oxygen, and the other one, you're at ground level, you can take a look with a heavy spotlight. You can't see the angles.
One would have a 3-foot riser, and the other one would have a 6-foot riser.
Right.
Right. So,
And at the
but
end of
both
the
of them,
6-foot riser, you won't be able to look inside the tank. I'm saying the person will have to climb down into the tank itself to peek inside.
Well, let's not recycle this.
I
This
know,
is misinformation. Let's not keep
And
going
if I
there.
could just take one more point, because you said you bring more information to me, I hope that doesn't come in with the application.
No.
With the tank with the tubes and looking for another argument.
The biggest thing that I can gather from this, and this is why I asked the question that you were talking about, is if there are engineering concerns, and we can meet those engineering concerns, would that be, if they were engineering-wise, service-wise, all of those things the same, would that be something the board would entertain? That's the only reason we're entertaining it is because we've been told and we believe that it is the same. If the answer is just no, because that's the rule, that's fine. That is the right of the board. But my question was, if it's an engineering question, let us answer it. If it's not an engineering question, if it's a
Engineering-wise, there's a few points in Title V you could argue and say, I could do it this way
Please.
engineering-wise,
Yeah.
And that's what I hope this board isn't entertaining, that we're gonna start now debating every single point that you wanna bring in for Title V. Now, there's a preamble we say before every variance. You say it many times, you probably know it by heart. Do you wanna throw that out the window? Is that what you're saying?
That's for rebuilds.
No, that's
No,
also,
that's
it's a
for new
variance, and it's the
construction.
same thing. It's
Well,
substantially,
the point
loss
is, we
of
don't
property.
offer variances for new construction.
but that's what you're asking them to entertain, so that's why I
No,
wanna know.
no, I was asking the question, if you've got a tank with a structure, this is like the old ironclad Monitor. You've got the main body boat, and then you got this little pillbox up on top. What's the top of the boat? Is it the hull, or is it the pillbox? That's the question I was asking Wade. In a underground septic tank, is it the top of the main tank, or is it the top of the riser that's got to be 3 feet from the surface?
It's the top
I
of the
think I
tank.
just heard Mr. Kelly say, one tank meets Title V and the other one doesn't.
Right.
Didn't, you just said that. So then if
All
it
right.
doesn't meet Title V,
then-
how are we going to
Now,
give
you've kind of
them-
cooked yourself on that one.
Okay,
Let's, seriously though, we've gotta end this already. If you wanna bring a variance in,
Well, no,
submit for a
don't
variance.
even
it would
bother.
only be if it's going to, if it,
All right,
because they
Hey,
can't
hey,
use
you
the
know what?
land.
I appreciate the
If you could somehow
discussion,
convince
yeah.
somebody at the State Department that the structure on top is
engineering-wise,
what's got to be.
it's the same.
No, I'm talking about the letter
Oh,
of the
oh, oh.
law. I'm back to Jeff's point. It's the letter of the law.
Okay.
Don't ask for a variance from the letter of the law for new construction. What that does mean is, you want a structure, it's got to be 3 feet from the ground, it's got to be 3 feet from the surface. The question you've got to answer, though, or somebody have asked an answer,
Yeah.
would these things you're building on top of the tank to gain access to
Part
the
of the
main
tank.
tank be considered a part of the tank, and only they have to be 3 feet from the ground?
Yeah, I agree. I know the first time we had this discussion,
That's the question.
I said that would be a way to get around, it's a loophole, and I didn't agree that was a way to do it. That you, by building this tank up, you're just trying to find a loophole in Title V by meeting the 36 inches, because you've got a big open tank. That's not for me to answer, by any
But the
means.
answer apparently is, yeah, you can do that.
Well, whose answer?
That's the answer we're working on. You just built the whole tank up.
But I'm saying, whose
And
answer
create
is
the
that?
second
That's
story.
your folks' answer. That doesn't mean that's straight from the
Right,
state.
but we all decided, I thought.
No, I
we
mean, not
did just-
necessarily.
No one said,
Super deep tank is
no one
okay?
was, well, no one was directing him to do that.
No, we're saying the super deep tank is off the board either way. The question is, does the shallow tank, even by trying to
No,
build
super
it
deep
up-
on the bottom,
Right.
shallow on top.
The depth
It's a
is always the
12-foot
same.
tank.
No, I know that. I'm saying
It's
the
a ten-
depth of
It's always
the
the
cover
same.
of the
I know,
tank,
I
we're
know, I know,
saying
I know.
the 8
No, I know
foot
you-
down to the top of the tank is out either way. It's the question, if you build it up so the top of the tank is within 3 feet of the ground surface, are you just trying to get around Title V's regulations by doing that? And is that even legal, so to speak? I brought that up at the last hearing. So, "No, you guys figure that out. Talk to the state, talk to someone, talk to Wade."
Right.
But apparently, that's the design they're submitting, so, I mean, I assume.
Well, that's where
everyone's
you're
in
going.
Well, it's almost like using you don't use pits anymore, like a 6 by 6 pit, and you have an effective depth of 6 feet with that pit. And instead, you put your pipe at 3 feet. So you're using 3 feet effective depth of leaching area, and you're wasting your unit. Your unit's too big. And the same thing with the tank. Your pipes are low, your retention time, you can actually require more retention time by lifting the pipes up higher, but you're not doing it because you're just wasting the tank. But they're wasting the tank to make a compliance, because they want to drop their pipes very low. I mean, they're making their
Well,
own
let's not go back
situation.
to that whole story.
Thank you
All right,
very
guys,
much.
we are done this conversation. Please come back to us with what we think to be a Title V system, all right?
We know, I thought. Painful.
All right, let's cycle back.
Thank you very much.
See you.
Yeah, guys.
Good night, thank you.
We began a conversation around tobacco regs. Maybe we ought to finish that one next, and then we'll get to some other stuff. So, the issue of selling cigarettes at Walgreens. Betsy, I understand there was a conversation around town hall about this.
There was one conversation with a planning board member who expressed concern about the potential impact it would have to Walgreens financially.
And that was the reason why I put this fact sheet together,
Yeah.
because of that.
Did we reach out specifically to Walgreens, since they're really the only retailer that's gonna be affected by
No,
this?
not yet, no.
I can just tell you that there's 120 Walgreens in towns in this 160 communities that that prohibit the sale of tobacco in pharmacies. And Walgreens did not show up at any of the hearings so that doesn't mean they're not going to show up at our hearing.
Well, I would like to
But-
get, it'd be nice to have a direct response, since they're literally the only company or store or retailer that's being affected by this. And I think
Yep,
the idea,
yep.
probably with the planning board, was probably, the last thing you want to do is scare them out of here, for some
I
reason.
think
If it's a on-issue, they'll say it. If their
Yeah.
tobacco sales really don't account for a lot of their profits, which they probably don't. If you walk into Walgreens, you don't see a large display.
Oh, there's a large display.
Well, I
Haven't been in
I don't
there.
know what I'm seeing is, but if that's the problem, and they say, whoa, we're out of here, well, I think the town would be kind of, cutting the nose off to spite the face, so to speak, to do that.
Well,
So
I
maybe
don't
we
think-
should reach out to them directly before we do anything else with this, or at least get a direct response from them if possible.
I think that the planning board has their purpose, and the Board of Health has their purpose.
But we both represent the town, we want the best for the town.
Yes, but we also represent the public health in the town. And so we come from this from a different direction than the planning board comes from. And again, based on the precedent that I see in other towns, I don't think that we should be scared out of our boots that Walgreens is going to pull out of Norfolk, if we were to say, will you pull out of Norfolk? So,
I tell you what, I think Jeff raises the point. There's one business being impacted by this new regulation. I think it's worthwhile on our part to make sure that we have a conversation at our next meeting, in fact, with the representative of Walgreens, to say, hey, look, or just let them know, this is
Exactly.
what's being proposed.
Just-
They
just
can
get a
show up or not
response
if
from
they
them.
have no
We don't
real
have to say,
concern.
well, we're scared you're gonna leave town, just ask them
No, no.
for comments on it.
Yeah. There's no reason why. It is interesting when you think about it. CVS, the biggest pharmacy in the country, stopped selling cigarettes some time ago. And for whatever reason, their next biggest competitor, Walgreens, because they bought out Rite Aid now, has decided they're going to keep on selling cigarettes. And it's an interesting corporate decision. CVS takes basically the notion that, yeah, they are a health provider, and they say, all right, this is inconsistent with our mission statement, therefore we're not going to sell cigarettes. Walgreens seems to be taking the position, well, we're basically a mini mart with a pharmacy, and we're going to keep on selling cigarettes. It's a corporate decision. It's too bad, but let's at least find out what the impact is of this on the operation down the street.
Agreed. And we can have someone reach out. Can't hurt.
In fact,
Yeah. Do
yeah,
that.
it's,
So I guess I'm still not sure where we're at with this. Is the board, how does the board feel about the fact that a pharmacy is providing, health care to the people in the community, and at the same time, we're selling cigarettes, which are killing people? And
This is-
so why wouldn't we just, as you did with the 21, rising, increasing the age to 21, why wouldn't we just change the regulation and then have a hearing? And if there was,
I would look at it
It-
more being a common courtesy. We had a few different retailers in that regard, so maybe reaching out to them specifically, what about realistic? But we've got one large retailer in town that does this, that this is gonna change, and we're just getting to make sure there's no comments. Well, no
So-
one's saying we dispute what you're saying,
No, no.
but we might as well just get a direct response from them.
so when you increased the age to 21, did you first reach out to every retailer in the town and say, so how is,
Well, that's
how
what I'm
is
saying.
your
There was more
sale
than,
going
it
to?
wasn't
Yeah, I
just
think,
one direct person.
I think we did reach out to all the retailers and let them know that this
Yeah.
is what we were
Proposing,
proposing
before you had the hearing.
before we had our hearing, yeah.
and they were here. I mean, a large number of them actually showed up for the public hearing. That there was pushback.
And they're
Well, there's-
local owners more so than a corporation, and maybe they didn't get the note, maybe they don't know, maybe they're not aware, So it's just a good neighbor, just ask, we'd hate to pass
yeah.
it and then say, whoa, what's all this,
Well, in
Okay.
this case, it is directed toward one business, so it certainly makes sense to let the business know, this is on our horizon. So, if you'd like to make comments to us, we're here to listen.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so happens that there's only one. We could have had a Stop and Shop in town, which was proposed at one point. They probably would have had a pharmacy, then we would have had two. So it's just the nature of the beast that there's
Yeah.
only one.
But we,
Well, that's-
but we did, even as Betsy was pointing out, even in the other cycle, we did actually we made sure
Okay.
that they saw what we were proposing. We didn't
Before it
invite
was
them.
published.
It
the-
went out
as
probably the
this
same
was-
time it went into the
I
newspaper.
think we even had discussions before we even had our public hearing. Gave them an opportunity to comment.
So I'm just
Yeah.
trying to understand the process. With the floor drain regulations, the first time anyone in the town knew about it, except if they listened to our Board of Health meeting, was when it was published in the newspaper that there were new regulations being proposed.
Mhm.
With the tobacco regulation changes, people heard about the proposed changes before it was published in the newspaper?
If I remember correctly, I think we did have some discussions before.
And honestly, we don't know who has floor drains in this town. We don't know every establishment that does. We couldn't possibly reach out to every one, because we don't really know what's behind those closed doors until they file for a permit of some type that they actually have to show something. So to say in fairness, well, we know
No.
one retailer, or we know 4 retailers, we don't know the floor drains,
No,
who
I was
has
just
them.
trying to understand the process.
Well, I think
How
this
is
is
the
a,
process the same all the time? Do you always first reach out to people when you're going to propose something new?
well, again, it's a common courtesy. If we can limit it to who we know it's going to affect, we might as well get their direct impact. you know?
Like when we did our Title
Good like
V
statements.
when we did our septic regulations,
Reached out to
we
the-
did reach out to,
Installers.
installers and designers to get their input.
Board members,
Yeah,
people in the community.
yeah, before we even came up, I think before we even came up, well, we might have had maybe some very draft.
Yeah, the more open it
But
is, the
before we
better.
had the public hearing, we did, definitely did,
The more transparent, the better, I mean,
Yep.
you know.
right.
Okay, so we can listen to any discussion about it, but the bottom line is that our role is to protect the public health. At least that's why I'm sitting on this board. Okay? I just want to make it clear. Okay,
Yeah. Whether we protect the health a little better by banning cigarettes at Walgreens and then across the street at, what's the name of the place now? In the plaza, across
Linda's Variety?
Linda's Variety. I'm sorry, I should know that, don't go to that.
but there is a disconnect between
Well,
someone
but
that's
this is-
taking
but-
care of the health of people, an
Yeah,
organization.
but you know what I just noticed? Walgreens is kind of playing a little fast and loose with this on this one, because the corporation is making a decision here. It's not so much this store in Norfolk. The corporation is making a decision to keep on selling cigarettes. They just recently changed their corporate motto. It used to have something to do with protecting people's health. Now the new motto is something like faithful service since 1903 or something. The word health is gone. It's almost like they're redefining who they are. That rather than being a pharmacy first and a couple of other things for sale, as I said a little while ago, they're turning into a mini mart that has a pharmacy in the back. That seems to be what this corporation has in mind for their new business plan, which bothers me, but that seems to be where they're coming from.
Do they offer flu shots to the public?
They do,
They do?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of like a health
Yeah.
facility.
So, could I just also throw this out? I was introduced to this, these, updating the regulation, the tobacco regulations, when I went to the Mass Association of Health Boards meeting in October or November, whenever it was. And this was presented by the Cheryl Sabara, at one of the presentations. And so she was the one that I reached out to help us modify our regulation so that we could incorporate this information about prohibition of sales in pharmacies. And at the time, she said, you probably want to think about having a hearing, and I mentioned, sure, we will have a hearing, that we did have a hearing. From historically, that's what you folks had mentioned when you updated the tobacco regs. So, and she thought that you might get some pushback from some of the big corporations. And I asked her if she would be willing to come to the hearing, because she has been through many communities, 160, a lot of them, that have put this regulation in. And if she would come to the hearing and act, and just be an outside observer and maybe comment on the history of how this regulation is going to, why it's being updated. So I just wanted to mention that I would like to invite her, if we're going to invite Walgreens to come.
Well,
I'd like
yeah,
to
we're not
invite her.
necessarily inviting them to show up at the meeting. We're just going to get some comments back. Obviously, anyone can show up to a public
Okay,
hearing.
so they would be on the agenda, so I would know that, or
Well,
not?
no, we're just gonna, I think we'd reach out to them via a letter, right? Which we've typically done, just to say, hey, do you realize we're doing this? Any comments? Or we're having the public hearing. That's what we've done. We changed the regulations. It's kind of a big deal. It's not, so we don't do it that often. So that's why, as Betsy said, we reached out to these septic installers when we did the changes that Way went through with those. And the same thing with the Tobacco 21 with the retail stores. You might as well reach out, since you don't do this every day. This isn't like a typical variance hearing or something like that, a local
Okay.
upgrade approval. So, by all means, if you want to invite her to come, I don't know if we need a whole discussion on it, because if Walgreens doesn't show up and we have no one to discuss, to argue
Right,
about
right.
it, I don't think it's going to be an issue.
Right.
You know, if Walgreens is here and she's here and they want to discuss, that might be a different story.
So we're going to send a letter to Walgreens and say, we are in the process.
Make you aware, this is on the agenda to do this.
Right.
If you have any comments, please let us know, or you are happy to attend, obviously, the public hearing, blah, blah, blah,
But
something like
this
that.
is not the hearing for the new regulations, because
Well,
that has to be posted.
We're going to
in
post
the
it, and we can
newspaper.
say you'll be notified of the posting, right? Because they're going to be notified, it's just a public at that
Do you
point.
guys want to schedule a public hearing for the next
What else do we
meeting?
have to do at this point?
Well, this is what I'm still not sure about the way the whole process works.
Well, I think we should have a public hearing scheduled, even if it's a month out or something like that. Get the notice to Walgreens just to see if they want to comment, and we can also tell them then at the date of the public hearing, since we have no other.
And the reason why Walgreens would be contacted, because they fit the definition that's gonna meet, that's in your regulation, and it might affect them financially.
And we're all trying to
So
work.
you're just reaching out to them, letting them know.
We're trying to
Right.
blindside it.
Yeah.
But
and
I
also
just
for
didn't know
future
whether
ones
you
coming in.
already you have a proposal for a new regulation out there for them to look at, is what I'm saying, but we haven't.
The only one we have is
Yeah,
this
we're
one,
here.
Right.
Yeah.
But,
which we need to doctor a little bit, just.
well,
to-
yeah, I just
fix it.
wanted,
No,
like I
whenever we
mentioned,
come up with
there's
this.
differences.
Yeah, no, whatever, I mean, this is, I mean, we said minor changes. just
Right,
with the-
right,
with
other
the
than-
Norfolk edition and things like
Mhm,
that, but
mhm.
we can get a date for the public hearing of this, be it a month out, or a month and a half, or 2 months, or whatever. From tonight, we can set a date,
Yeah.
you know?
And then send them a an invitation, or not an
Not an
invitation, but
invitation.
just saying, by the way, we
Yeah,
are going to
we're
have a
doing this,
public hearing.
and let them know.
So this will have already been posted in the newspaper then?
It will be in the future, right. Yes.
Yeah.
They'll get notified, and we'll let them know, you know, do you have any comments, you know, please email them, whatever we do. And the public hearing is on this date, blah, blah,
Okay.
blah. And then,
That
you
makes
know, that's
sense
be
to
the
me.
date that we would, what's her name, Spira?
Yes.
Would show up
Sabara.
if she wanted to.
Mhm.
And, you know, we have any discussion that needs to happen, and we can vote on it that night. And if we got no comments back,
Yeah.
And the reason why Walgreens is being contacted, because they're the only one that fits the definition. If there's 5 of them, 5 letters would go out.
Okay.
You know, so they're
Yeah.
not being picked.
No,
on.
I
Yeah,
that-
it's just.
so maybe we can
So-
come to an agreement on these at least,
I was
right?
going to say, yeah, so the things to do tonight, two things that come to mind is, one, make sure that everything that we have in front of us now, with the changes you've already talked about, is in fact what we want to post and have a public hearing on. And
And it sounds like, Fran, you're okay with the way these are written, you just, that one change,
Right,
obviously
but-
add Norfolk in.
Well, no, there were other they're not changes, but just, well, there were a few things that I mentioned.
But was there, I didn't think you had an issue with any of them.
No, I don't have an issue with it,
Right.
but I don't know why you folks would have adopted a certain thing one way, and that's why I want to make sure that it's not, you know, the workaround that is a little bit different on here. It might make a difference to you. This is new to
I mean,
me,
the
and
wording
it
was a
doesn't.
little changes, as you pointed out, but the intent is all there with the
Yeah.
addition of what we asked for.
Well, right, as one of the co-authors of the original, I don't see anything, you know, that's somehow.
Okay, for
different.
example, I mean, where this is blacked out, or by filing a criminal complaint at the appropriate venue. You know, did you have a special reason for wanting that in? And so that's why I wanted to make sure that,
Maybe a draft should be numbered, because there's many different drafts.
I'm sorry?
Is that what you're concerned about, Fran, that there might be more than one draft out there?
No,
People might
no,
work.
that, this is the new draft, and this is the current regulation, and I just want to make sure that these folks are comfortable with all
You
the
know what?
new verbiage and the new
I
draft.
think the original was based upon somebody else's model regulations.
Yeah, yeah.
And those words were in there, and they said, okay, sounds
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And so, for whatever reason, the new set, the new model this is being based on, it's got a couple of just changes in the way stuff is said, as you already indicated. Not very many.
No,
No, that's the
I mean,
overall
the intent
still there.
is still there,
Right.
and I think everything was captured.
So it's safe to
So-
say we can move forward with as written, except for the Norfolk change on section B, authority, clear that up.
So that's it. In terms of highlighting, I like the idea of, at least if we're going to be sending out a copy like this one to Walgreens and to your colleague, that we do highlight where the substantive changes are that relate to the issue of the healthcare institution no longer being allowed. I mean, these other issues are really not significant compared to that one.
Right.
L,
And
item K
K.
is it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The attention is directed to.
Yep, yep, yep. So, if we all are happy with the way this has been written, then why don't we say this is the one that's going out with the change that we've already talked about, and the highlighting of the really important changes that are in here.
Yeah.
And the other thing we gotta do is set a date for a public hearing. So, give ourselves a month, with the end of February. Uh,
27th?
Looking like it,
It's fine.
27th February.
Fine with me.
So Betsy,
Okay.
you didn't hear from any of the selectmen, right, on this issue?
No, but I didn't send it to them either, so.
We should. Maybe I heard from somebody else there was an issue with one of the select.
Do you want to push it out 2 weeks in case we get a deal with something else?
Deal with something else related to this,
Well,
or something
yeah,
totally
is
different?
this one concerns with the selectmen or anything else?
Yeah. Hmm.
March 6th?
We're giving ourselves 4 weeks to figure out whatever.
But we're not going to be meeting before that point.
Right. Hmm. Well, the only issue is, might we encounter anything that would require that we change this document? I can't think of anything.
It would also give Walgreens a chance to respond if they wanted to.
Well, right.
And the selectmen, if they have anything they want to say on it.
Yeah.
If you do publish it, or
Right.
let people know there's a
Talking
copy
right
at the
now,
office.
You know, if there was something to come back and for some reason we did have to meet to discuss, it would give us time to do that, as opposed to a month might be a little tight.
Mhm. We could try pushing it back into March, except I got some traveling I gotta do in March. Let's be optimistic. Let's go for the 27th. And your colleague is certainly welcome. Well, frankly, you did a pretty good job yourself of presenting the case, so it's up to you if you want to have backup.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to argue with, right now, I think if no one's to show up and we're sitting here, we're passing it, realistically. So to have her come give a presentation, she's not going to sway us, there's nothing to sway. It's just a matter of if someone else, she may want to be here in case there is someone at the public hearing that is arguing against it.
Well, like
But
we said, if the groundwork has already been done and she's been to hearings and listened to arguments, it would be helpful not to
Yeah.
have to recreate the wheel.
Right, like I said, if there's no one here and there's no comments,
Mhm.
we don't need her even presentation, nothing against her, but we don't need to hear the whole spiel. We've heard enough of it to
Yeah.
think that we're okay.
Yeah, I think the point was made that at a hearing, the board just listens, and then it's after the hearing that they take a vote. I mean,
Yeah.
within, in session, but, you just really listen to the discussion.
Yeah.
Don't get carried away with it.
Well-
Anyway, okay.
All right.
I think a board could have different formats. The board could have a public hearing session where they don't say anything.
Mhm.
People talk to them, and then you have another meeting to discuss it, and then you have a proposal, and go ahead. It's
Different
options.
ways of.
That-
Yeah,
That's a-
sometimes the
it's a-
vote isn't taken
Okay.
that
With a
night.
small
Yeah.
format, I mean, it's hard not to respond back to them.
Yeah, Yeah,
Use
yeah, it depends, you're right, on how big it
Mostly if they're wrong.
is. Okay.
All right, on the other side, let's see. Should we finish up the new business?
Business.
We have MRC updates.
Oh, we had a
I'll put
great,
you back on the spot, Fran, but what?
oh, what about, you don't want to do minutes next?
Well, we can do that. I was just, we already got one piece of new
Okay.
business out of the way, so I
Okay.
thought we might just continue.
So, MRC. So last night, well, first of all, January 8th, we had a very productive meeting, and Officer Canadian presented a PowerPoint on a mass vaccination that he was the leader, or he directed at one of our local colleges, and it was for a meningococcal outbreak. And so he, after having showed us that, more or less said, I'll help you folks put together the EDS, Emergency Dispensing Site Plan, because he says it's going to be a piece of cake. So we said, great, help us. So that's what we have the guidelines from the state, which are new guidelines that just came out to towns saying this is what needs to be in the plan. And we also have Walpole's plan. So between the two and with his input, we hope to put together emergency dispensing site plan. And our next meeting is on February 5th. So that was one of the things that we talked about at the meeting. The other thing was we talked about pet emergency preparedness. Dr. Siegel of Benton gave a presentation about that. And Betsy, I owe you some information. You actually, I think, sent me an email saying which one of these pet emergency.
yeah, that's right.
This is about
We can talk
pet
about- we can
emergency
talk about-
preparedness. Yeah, I have to send Betsy, I haven't read them yet.
Yeah.
And we're going to publish that in the newspaper. And we had a CPR course last night that was full. We had 12 attendees, and it went very smoothly. It was great.
Where was that now?
Right here.
Here,
Oh, yeah?
yeah, right there. It was one of the mannequins where you're sitting. They were pumping your chest.
Did I see the office when it did? Yeah.
And one of my action items was to email the selectmen and to ask them where the local emergency management plan is. So I did email, no, I sent them letters. I actually delivered them to the town hall. And I said, please come to our meeting and explain to the MRC where the local emergency management plan is. So, and I said, please RSVP, and I haven't heard from any of them yet. So I'm hopeful that someone shows up at the May 5th meeting to tell us where this plan is. Because the plan that we're putting together for dispensing sites is supposed to be part of the big plan. So
Talk to Jack Hathaway, wouldn't you have access to that?
I actually made him a copy of the,
Okay, all right.
yes, I've already spoke to Jack. He
Alright,
doesn't know where the plan
He
is.
doesn't know where it is either.
No. So I'll keep
Who
you
else
up
would
to
know?
date.
Ed Nolan?
Under his monitor.
Yeah. He's got a
Check it out.
binder that from 1990. That's where the plan
Not
is,
very
in a
up to date.
binder in his office. Well, at least he did back in June when I asked him, and I saw the plan.
Mhm.
But that's where it's at. So, that's the MRC. And I think just one last thing, that Dr. Siegel also is organizing a volunteer day, town volunteer day, which means that all the volunteer organizations would set up a table at the library, and people could go and find out about different organizations in town and see if they wanted to volunteer at any of them.
Yeah, she's got 5 or 6 that have
Yeah.
already responded that they were interested.
So the MRC would help her put that together, and we would have a table. But lots going on.
Date to be determined.
Yes,
Oh.
yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay.
So, you said that was also the EDS,
Right, the emergency
Right,
dispense
sure.
and site plan.
all right. Okay, we have minutes to talk about. Did you have some changes or corrections to the minutes?
I just saw one thing that I didn't understand, and I don't know, where was it? I had a copy of it that I wrote on, but where are the minutes?
Did you find them? They should be in your packet.
Yeah. Do you have them in front of you? Because I can show you.
Here's a copy.
Okay, so, maybe I'm looking at it too. It said, okay, on page 2, I just didn't understand. Mr. Gilbert said has not received the required soil evaluator forms. I don't know, it's just the sentence doesn't make any sense, and I don't know what it meant.
I,
I'm not quite sure what that meant.
my reaction to that sentence was to get rid of it. Because I've kind of lost
Did you see
track.
that?
You know what, actually,
Yeah,
I think that picks up from something that actually Wade was talking about, and I think I kind of mentioned it as well. And that is, if we don't have those forms, they're not in the file, then they're not part of public record, therefore, you know.
We don't have
You
the
can't-
forms for the latest soil investigation that happened out there,
It's
right?
missing a couple words. I think it was supposed to say,
Right. So,
said the office has not received the required soil evaluator
Yeah.
forms.
from the latest round of soil testing, I would say, or something like that.
If the office has not received, okay, well, however, I don't know if you need to change it, but,
Well, my suggestion, actually, because I took a look at that section in some detail myself, and what I'd rather do is get rid of my saying it, because I was actually borrowing Wade's words.
oh, here.
And I'd rather put them back in his mouth.
And Wade can come up with the sentence.
So here's actually the thought that I had on that topic.
How about Wade confirmed that the office has not received soil evaluation forms from the
Well,
latest round of soil testing?
Can I just read this is a revision to actually what is here. Mr. Saucier added that soil evaluators are required to submit the test logs, Forms 11 and 12, to the Board of Health within 60 days of the tests, or the board may reject the information. His job as Board of Health agent is to verify that the information on these forms is consistent with what he witnessed in the field during testing. Unfortunately, a number of soil tests on the lots on Pennacook Street were initiated, but the results of the tests were never submitted. I think that's what I heard you say.
Correct.
Yeah, that
And you're
sounds
outside the
great.
60 days.
That's good,
And
thank you.
therefore are not part of the public record.
Correct.
Fair enough? Okay. And you also stated that any personal field notes you may have are not part of the public record.
Correct.
Okay. You okay with that sentence?
Can we put some reference into the Wade dossier? Of the soil logs.
Yeah. All right.
Saucier
Tell you what, I will
dossier.
email this to you.
Perfect, sounds great.
It's a rewrite on that paragraph, but I think it
Okay.
captures what Wade was trying to say.
Yeah, thanks, thank you, thank you.
All right.
Appreciate that.
I had anything else? Just that crazy sentence, is that all you had?
That was it. That was
Anything?
all I saw.
No,
One question, Betsy. In the front page of the thing, you have who was there. But you didn't put in the abutters or the other folk who were here at the meeting. Did you not mean to do that?
I don't
On
usually
page
see
1,
that.
where it says others?
Well, I didn't mean to do that, but I can.
do we always put them in?
I don't
I don't
think
remember
they're
seeing
always in
anyone
there,
saying
but should they be in there?
Well,
I don't,
this
think
is
they
a
were-
quick question for just making notes of these things. Do you want
No.
to include everybody who was present at the meeting at some point?
A sign-in sheet?
so the September meeting didn't have, I don't know if there was anybody there, the June meeting
Should
doesn't
we put
have
it
any
underneath each
others.
section?
I know in one rewrite, when
The
we had those
August-
guys from Lawrence Street, I suggested putting their names
Yeah, I
in
don't
the
see.
You asked for-
others.
You asked for their names.
Well, can we put it under the sections where it says for the actual project, in attendance?
Or do it that way, too. Yeah. Either way is okay.
That means you gotta get names and.
All right. Betsy, are you recording these? Betsy, are you recording, like, when somebody introduces himself? You got that,
Or do
right?
we need a sign-in sheet just on the
I've
corner
got
of the
it.
desk?
I've got it in the minutes.
Okay. All right.
I think that would be a good addition.
Okay,
Well,
Tom's
either
making
way.
the minutes.
So, all right, we'll scratch names of the butters for now. All right, if we're okay with minutes as amended, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to accept minutes as amended?
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, what else is on the list here?
Correspondence.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to give you each one of these. This is the semi-annual monitoring report associated with the Norfolk Municipal Landfill. And this gets back to the question of dioxin. So I think I highlighted summary on page.
Yeah, you were there talking about it.
This is consistent with previous sampling results, but I don't actually know what I don't have those. I gave them to Betsy, so I'm not sure how high they were before, if these are changes, I don't know. And then the second page, it says, this is consistent again, but does not require notification to DEP.
Even though it's above the regs, or above
Yeah.
the,
And then this actually gives you what the levels were in those three places. And somehow I remember that there were only 2 before, but maybe there were 3 sites before. But if we could just get some more information
I
about,
apologize, I will, I
Yes.
said, I did get the return back, I have been lax on this, and I will call tomorrow. Now that you have clearly delineated, because I have the
you to it.
whole booklet, I'm like, I gotta go through, but now.
well,
it's
no,
been
if you want
highlighted.
the whole booklet, the whole
Spoon-fed to
booklet
me.
is in there. I
Right.
gave it
I
back to
have that,
Betsy.
so,
So, do you have any
so action will be taken.
Yes.
Do you have any
You know what,
thoughts about it? I
Post
don't know.
haste.
What's a little weird is that whatever their MCP is, maximum contaminant,
It's so low.
is 0.3, and the
Yeah.
numbers they're picking up out there are
Yeah.
2.9.
Yeah, that's a little high.
They're 3 times higher.
So why it's not, I don't know.
Well, it's
So
not
why
an
is,
issue.
why is something not 10 times
Right.
higher important, is the question.
Okay, so that's the dioxane. And then in the correspondence, there was also this inspection from MCI. Now, I'm just curious. I'm guessing that we get these reports because we must issue food permits. Is that correct? Well, how can we get these? Okay, then we don't issue.
Not for MCI, no.
Okay. Because there were 10 food storage violations. So I thought, well, we must give a food.
Right.
Why do we get these?
It must be state regulation, I have no idea.
Oh,
We don't regulate them.
We
Well,
don't
We don't-
regulate the
We've had
state
issues in the
facility.
past with water supply down there.
okay, okay,
Courtesy, maybe a courtesy?
okay. Well, there are pages of violations.
Right, that's,
But,
Hmm,
so what do we do with them? I don't,
nothing, we put them in, it goes in a file.
deep background. Mark
I
doesn't
mean-
do this, right? They have their
No.
own guy that does this.
so we
Yeah,
don't have
there's- we've
anyone
got
from
nothing
our
to do with it.
town that
No,
goes,
state properties inspector own.
okay. I mean,
The Department of
Falls
Public
in-
Health, the Community Sanitation Program oversees that.
okay. Yeah, it says Community Sanitation Program. That's one of the people that did the audit. Okay, so noted.
Okay. Well, thank you for checking
You're welcome.
up on them.
Okay. So you can have this
I've got-
back too, so that's all
All right.
I have, thank you.
Awesome. I've just got a couple sets of minutes for you to sign in the bush.
Sure.
And then here is, some more mail for you. It's not as bad as it looks, really.
Yeah, this probably one big.
No, it's just like one big, I think that was the, environmental notification form for the Abbeville project on Lawrence Street. So,
And should I do that now or wait until we're?
you can sign,
Done.
whatever, it's just
Okay.
2 sets for your signature. We're good.
So, let's see, you're going to let the water department know that we now have floor drain regulations?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
So we can, what we waiting on for the well, right? Is that what it was for?
Yeah.
Holbrook Street.
DEP approval of the well site, well
Right.
field?
Holbrook Street?
I'm sorry. I was looking at this report,
Oh,
and there's so many pages, it's not because it's violations. it's a list of areas that they look at, so a lot of these things, there are
Yeah.
no violations listed.
Yes, there were.
For
But
the
this
other-
is for the MCL.
There are a lot of
Yeah, so it's just their
violations
report, which
listed.
it took 5 days to do, and 4 people were there.
You know, it
sorry.
was an important question. I mean,
Of
you
course, all
guys know
questions
with
are-
the direct the fact that we have flooding regulations. We were just saying, where was the new well field? Do you remember?
Holbrook's, off of Holbrook Street?
Oh, the new well, yes, it's up between Millis and Holbrook Street, that area.
It's right down around the corner from
Is
my
it down near
house.
the old
Oh, yes, it is, that's your
hunting club,
neighborhood.
It's,
Fish and Game Club?
Still there.
it's,
Farther
that's
down.
Holbrook, yeah.
Farther down Holbrook, it's past the
Farther down Holbrook.
Placido's project.
Oh,
Near the-
oh.
Near the end of Holbrook Road, there's like a big open town land area south of Holbrook. That's the area they're interested in.
Huh.
So it'd be bordering.
Do you know where the
Zone 2
Charles
would be
River
Dry
going
is?
to
out
both
that,
towns.
dry
The
out
new,
the truck
the
club
bridge
there.
over the Charles
they're
River,
down
Pleasant
the road
Street.
more.
Are they? Okay.
So if you went to the,
Oh, really?
there was a new bridge about maybe 8
Oh,
years
it's past
ago.
there?
So it's coming back up Holbrook Street. It's actually on the, some of it is Millis, we had, I think we bought land from Millis.
It's right on the border, it's really
Yeah.
close.
In that field, in
So,
that field?
yes,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's much further up there.
So your Zone 2 would probably be showing your Zone 2 at Millis, because they're in Zone 2, in that area of the town.
It's not far from the Gold Street well, right?
Gold Street? That's quite a ways away.
If you go around the corner to Medway Street,
Would be close there, yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's the same, probably it's the same aquifer,
Right.
but it's,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
uh,
Gold Street has a well?
We have 2 wells on Gold Street,
Okay.
yeah. A and B. One might be closed because there was manganese levels, high levels. at one
Manganese
point.
levels?
Yeah, were high. I don't know if it's reopened again. Do you remember? I don't know.
What is it?
There were 2 wells on Gold Street, and one they had to close, I think, because of high manganese levels.
Oh, really?
But that doesn't sound familiar.
No.
Okay.
no, it does sound familiar.
One eating away the pipes?
Well, you know what, I just hit me this business of dioxane. I mean, what's the distance between the old landfill and the Gold Street well?
Well, in between the two, there are many individual wells, private wells.
Oh, there are lots of private wells, I'm sure.
That's
I'm just thinking, just go down Medway Branch,
Yes.
and you keep on going.
You have to go,
Go
As you're
into
heading
the
toward the Gold
woods.
Street well?
you have to go to Tupper
You have to
Road.
go into the woods and...
Well, I'm just saying going by the landfill, just keep
Yes.
on going.
Yeah.
The old right-of-way for the train that used to go
Yes,
down
that's the woods.
toward Millis. I thought you were heading generally, well, maybe heading a little west of heading toward the Gold Street.
You are. So you go into the woods, and then you would bear to the left, and you would eventually come to the Gold Street wells, because I've walked there.
Oh,
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
used to explore down there, huh?
well, I do still now.
Oh, nice.
We
Where do
go
you
into
live?
the woods,
Do you live down there?
Pin Oaks,
Which is where?
which is one of the new developments that abuts this new area, the field that almost abuts it, where the well is going, the new well is going.
55 and older, just beyond Village at River's Edge.
Yeah, there are 2. There's one behind Village Ed.
Yeah, that one, yeah.
Village
that's
Ed's.
nice.
That's Pin Oaks.
Oh.
Anyway.
No, I used to go cross-country skiing down there.
And we do,
What,
that's
that
what
right
we
away?
do.
That right away still?
Yes.
you can
It's a
still-
great cross-country ski
Really?
road.
Yeah,
And
just-
a lot of snowmobiles go in there,
Yeah.
and they make,
Nice trails.
yeah, maybe I'll see you someday in there. Anyway, okay.
Now with the well.
All right, we're off the subject, aren't we?
Well,
To adjourn.
Anything else? I don't think so. Motion to adjourn, is there a
Yes, sir.
second?
My second.
All in favor? Aye, we're adjourned.